Hey y'all, welcome back to the Body Space. I have another guest today. This is Alex Wetz. We have been connected on Instagram for like the last couple years, I think, and she's a friend and current client. We're going to talk a little bit about her story with chronic pain and illness, as that has woven her into some work with chronic pain, chronic symptoms, some coaching work that she's done in that realm. So yeah, just another great interview. And I'm going to start by asking you, Alex, like if you could share a little bit more on this concept I talk a lot about on the podcast and in my content as a whole, is this idea of body-led forced surrender being a season of life where usually it includes some level of chronic pain or symptoms, but the cause, the physical components that create it are like a little bit different for every person. But the process is very similar in that it forces us into this deeper dialogue with the body, with the identity, with parts of the self, with how we've been operating. And it forces us to change a lot more than just our diets and our supplements and our protocols. So I know you have a profound story with forced surrender, chronic pain and illness. And I'd love to start by just opening a conversation about that.
Yeah. I love the term forced surrender. I think people could look at that negatively, but it was the surrendering that changed my life, changed the trajectory of my life in a really positive way. I started to have chronic symptoms pretty young. I think a lot of people that end up chronically ill end up looking back over the years and tracing it back way further than just the last year or the last 6 months or that one injury or that one illness, and seeing a pattern. And so, yeah, the pattern began very early, just quite a sickly child, and lots of unexplained symptoms. I had things like just vomiting for no reason, poor sleep. I remember having neurological testing done because I had pins and needles feeling through my legs when I was like 8 or 10 years old, very like young to be having these strange things going on. And then I had a really bad autoimmune flare when I was 18 years old. And that, I feel, was a very defining moment in my life. It's a time when I was in university. I'd just started university, so just starting to become an adult. And I remember feeling a huge amount of stress and overwhelm about leaving home, living somewhere else, and going from this small pond to huge pond, like huge demands on my like my abilities, I guess. It was like, right, you've got to prove yourself in this space. And that says a lot about the way my brain works, okay? And yeah, it took me out of university. I was in hospital on and off for a year. It was a self-limiting autoimmune disease, but it got very serious. And they thought I might need surgery. I had debilitating joint pain, like constant vomiting. I had intussusception of my stomach, which is where your stomach kind of folds on itself. Excruciating pain. It was very, very scary because it came out of nowhere, turned my life upside down, my parents' life upside down. And I feel like it was defining because it's a time in your life where you shouldn't be sick. Like, you should be taking risks and living this, full life with your friends. And at college, you would call it, I guess, in the States, but at university, like your life expanding, and mine just shrunk.
Yep.
And it was obviously very traumatic. I didn't know the word trauma at that time. I didn't understand what was happening to my brain and nervous system outside of, all these physical symptoms. It was all about that. And I ended up with damage to my kidneys. It was an inflammatory disease called HSP. So you get bleeding all through the body. It's a massive inflammatory response. And that's why it's so difficult to treat because you can't turn your immune system off. So the treatment is really, it's not a cure, it's let's keep you comfortable, reduce the pain, and try to get the inflammation down a bit until your body decides to calm down. I'm going to use the term system, if that's okay, because I really struggle with like brain, body is the same thing.
Yes.
So that's what I'm going to use from now on.
Defining our terms early. Brain, body,
yeah.
It's both.
That was a kind of forced surrender, but I didn't surrender because I was 18 years old and I was just like, I just wanted to get back to life and I didn't know any different. All it left me with was fear.
Yeah.
Fear that at any day, any time, I could get that sick again and my life could just implode. And things were okay. I recovered. It took a few years for me to fully recover and get off medications. Most medications, I still take medication for the damage to my kidneys because you can get this bleeding all over your body and there are certain organs that just don't recover very well, that stay damaged, and your kidneys are one of those things. So I knew I'd be on medication for life for that. But I was pretty well. I struggled with anxiety. I struggled with depression. Very hard on myself. And then the next big defining moment was 2020. So we're going fast forwarding a lot there. Yeah. I think that was a forced surrender for a lot of people because of COVID. A lot of different things came together at the same time. I'd had IBS for a while. I knew I had PCOS. I'd had acne for my whole life, well, from teen to then. It was like these symptoms that you could kind of manage, you know, and then one day you can't. And my digestive system just stopped working. I stopped sleeping. I had terrible insomnia. And then I developed also this chronic pain, which was this bladder pain, which nobody could explain. And it was really contributing to the insomnia. And I ended up having to stop working because I simply couldn't function. I could barely get out of bed because of the fatigue. I suddenly started getting joint pain everywhere. I remember walking to the park with my husband and I felt like an 80-year-old. I actually said that. I was like, I feel like my body is an 80-year-old's body. It was stiff and I just felt so unwell and I didn't know what was happening and didn't get anywhere with the Western medical system. And so I went down the functional route, and long story short, that didn't get me to where I wanted to go. I ended up doing mercury chelation. I don't know if you've come across chelation. I would not recommend it to anyone ever. But it was trying to find what was wrong with me, and that was the most plausible explanation. The problem with all of that was it just kept me in this hypervigilance. Yep. Suddenly I took everything out of my diet. I was not eating enough. And I was taking, I don't even know. I remember having 2 huge drawers in my kitchen of supplements. I remember it being like kind of a spectacle to get, when people came over, I was like, look at all this. And I was kind of proud of it because it sort of proved that I was sick and that I was doing something. And
that is so powerful though, because it's like the identity work of like sorry to interject, but that hit me really hard. It proved that I was sick. It proved that I was in pain. It proved that it was real. Because like for me, so much of my experience, I actually was able to trace back to the chronic feeling of not being listened or heard or attuned to in any way. And so one way for me to get a level of attunement or connection that I was desiring was for something to be wrong with me, right? And so there was always, as much as you don't want something to be wrong with you, there's always this need to convince someone that what you're experiencing is real, because also now you have people in your life that don't understand the experience you're having. And you feel like they think you're making it up, or they think it's all in your head, or if it's nervous system and or they think, even if they do understand like neuroplastic pain, they think that means it's not real, or it's somatic, which means it's not real. And so there is this like really difficult double-edged sword where like one side of you is trying so hard to heal, and you're swearing that that's what you desire, is to be better. And you have this competing antithetical part of you that's actually almost fighting to be unwell, because there's something that you're getting from it. You're getting listened to, you're getting heard, you're getting paid attention to, and you're being believed. And so one thing I had to really recognize was like, I'm not going to heal any of this if I'm still trying to convince the people around me that what I'm experiencing is valid. I have to know that it is. And then, so that what you said was like, I had to interject because, you know, it proved that I was ill. Like, wow, what a statement. Wow.
Yeah. Well, when you've been to doctors that say your blood work's fine,
yep,
you're depressed, take some antidepressants, take some muscle relaxants, take these painkillers, that's all we can really do for you. But you're like, you know, my body is breaking down here. I'm really unwell. And I was really unwell. Yeah, when you go to functional medicine and they're like, oh, yes, you are. Yeah. And this is what's going on. And this is what you're going to do to fix it.
Wow.
It was so validating for me. It was like, finally, someone gets it. And it was dangerous because, like you said, it became another identity of sick. You know, it just became something else to hold on to really tightly. And long story short, I didn't get better doing that.
Nor did I.
So it's so interesting to reflect on because I'm just not that person anymore, which is a really something I want to underline, because that's what you have to become a different person, because your illness is attached to an old version of you. I do strongly believe that, and I'm happy to talk more about that. But at that time, I needed that identity. And I remember doing all of that, and my whole life was on hold. I was healing.
Yeah.
And I had this idea of like, I'm going to get to this point and I'll be done with this, and then my life starts again.
I had the same exact experience. Yeah. And a little like thing that just came into my mind when you were saying how dangerous feeling validated by functional medicine is, dangerous because the testing never ends. The supplements never end. And even when you do the testing, there's always a percentage of like, oh, it might not be accurate. Like you could do a mold panel, but like, we all have mold. So it's like, okay, so is it valid or not? Is this what's causing my symptoms or not? And it's like, you can keep searching and you never feel like you have answers. Even when you get some answers, you never feel like you have answers. And what came up for me just now is the search never ends until you end the search. Like you're not going to find what you're looking for. You're going to have to
get your sovereignty back.
You're going to have to change your relationship with how you're relating to your body and your symptoms, which ties directly into identity, which I believe is where we left off. So sorry to interject again.
Yeah, no, it's all totally related. A lot of what I did for all those years was just outsource to experts. And I have total compassion for that, and compassion for anybody going through that, because what else are you going to do? Like, you haven't got any other model. So it's like, I'm sick. Somebody please help me get better. And you're so vulnerable to marketing, to the conditioning, to, you know, these plausible theories. And you will, if you're someone like me, you will explore them all. And I spent my life, if I wasn't taking supplements, I was, you know, figuring out what magic bullet supplement I needed next and what protocol I needed to do next. And I've done all the protocol. I mean, probably, when you're doing mercury chelation, you're getting up through the night to take chelators because I was having to learn the physics of pharmacology, like, the half-life of this chelating drug, because otherwise what happens is the bond is, because every drug has a half-life, right, in your body. That's why you can't take it once and keep getting the benefits. And the problem when you're doing chelation is that it's like a magnet. So it's picking up the toxic metal and escorting it out of your system through one way or another, right? Through sweat or through urine or feces. And when the half-life runs out, the bond breaks. So let's say you've got mercury in your bone, right? It goes into your circulation and then it can drop it in your brain. Don't really want it there. This circulation is very dangerous. So that's why you have to take them on a strict kind of
hypervigilance. My God.
What about hypervigilance? Yes, yeah. So
like voluntarily stepping into even more hypervigilance, and this is how I heal. But what if that's what created the and then
yeah, you're catching on way quicker than I did.
It's taken a while, but yeah, like it's.
So with hindsight, I'm looking at what I did and just no wonder you went absolutely insane. And then you think it's because you need to double down more.
Yep.
Oh, you're not adhering to the protocol strictly enough. You need to do more. You need to keep doing more. You need to keep finding out more, learn more, fix more. And anyway, I did that for a while. It definitely wasn't getting better, just getting worse.
Yeah. And you wonder why the people in your life who aren't even taking care of their health at all are like so fucking healthy and they're totally fine. And you never think anything of it. You're like, fuck that. That's so unfair. It's like, is there something to this? Obviously, I don't want to eat Taco Bell every day and not ever take care of my health and whatever. But there is this middle ground of, just learning that the obsession and the hypervigilance is part of what's driving me.
Yeah. And so I'd had those experiences early on in my life, and functional medicine again will go, oh well, you probably had a dairy intolerance from birth, or you had a ton of metals passed down to you from your mother. This may all be true, by the way, but the obsession with there being physically something wrong with you is what keeps you ill and what keeps you in pain. And I stumbled across brain retraining because in an effort so I stopped working. I was a Pilates teacher. I had a business doing that. I just physically couldn't keep doing it. And I wanted to do something, and I was really into functional medicine at that point. You can tell how far I was into it with doing chelation and stuff. And so I trained to be a functional medicine coach. The idea being that I would work with people eventually when I was better. But it was also about me, again, just learning more. And this idea that if I learned more, if I just figured it out, I would get better. Mm-hmm. And through that training, I worked with someone from a previous cohort. I was a coachee, and she brought up brain retraining in this program, and I just I think it was in the we were talking about MCAS maybe, and she had MCAS, and she was like, "Oh, I'm doing this thing, and it's really interesting," and sort of recommended it. I just completely parked over there. I was like, there's something physically wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my brain. Like, it's my body. Yeah. And there is nothing wrong with my brain, by the way. But and then after literally exhausting everything, if someone had said, if you stand on your head for 10 minutes a day, it's going to make you feel better, or you're going to get a bit of energy, or your digestion will get better, or you'll be able to eat this food again. At this point, I was only eating meat, some fruits, no grains, no dairy, everything fun. I was basically doing carnivore-ish at this point. Previous to getting sick, I'm a huge food lover. Food was a huge part of my life. So I have special kind of grief when you're when you're doing that kind of diet. I would have done anything at that point, and that's what led me to brain retraining. And then everything changed because I finally saw how much I was responsible for what was happening in my system, and that I had one thing that I could control a bit was how I was thinking and how I was relating to what was happening in my body, regardless of what the symptoms were and how much pain I was in. I had this choice. And it's really interesting timing, actually, because at the same time I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which I know gets touted, I think, a lot in these sort of spaces. It's a very dark book, obviously, but I was in a very dark place at that time. And sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that. I want to normalize that, actually, as well, because I had to go through all of these things. I don't look back and regret anything that I did, because I would not have got the wisdom and learned what I've learned. So I read that book, and I remember him talking about this idea of, no matter what your circumstances are, you have a choice about how you move through those, how you navigate them. And to get even just that little bit of power back, that thought of, okay, there's something here. There was still a little bit of fire in me that was left. And so I guess I started to live a bit more like that. And I also had an amazing therapist at a similar time. I only saw her once because what she said to me was so jarring to my worldview at that time, or the way I was being at that time, that I hated her for what she said at the time. But she basically said, what if this is as good as you're ever going to feel?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What? No, that's like my nightmare scenario. But it's a really
surrender. It's like you heal by being okay with this being permanent, which is such an insane. And this is why I say that those people who have had chronic pain and chronic illness or been through forced surrender are the most enlightened people I've ever spoken to, because that is like essentially the path of every path of enlightenment, and every study in the world is like to be unattached to the way
to surrender to it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what he was essentially saying. Like, stop. If you were to stop fighting this and just accept this, not living, because what I was doing, and I think it's normal to do this, I was living in this like imaginary future where everything was sunshine and rainbows and I was healed and I was a normal person, or I was sort of living in this past version of myself. I did not want to occupy the current version of myself. It was a horrible place. And so I feel like that acceptance piece is so important. You have to just go, this is my reality. What can I do? You can't get to that place of what can I do without acceptance of where you are right now.
Yeah. And I don't know if this has been like your similar experience, but you said about like imagining the future healed version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm in that now, but it doesn't look the way I thought it would look. In other words, it's not symptom free. It's not 100% pain free. Like, I still have experiences where I would have formally defined them as like, I'm ill, I'm not well. Things aren't perfect. My body's still communicating with me. Oops. We lost her. We might have to start this one again. Oh, let's bring her back in. Let's see. Invite Alex. Let's see if that works. If not, we might have to reset, but that's fine. Oh, yay! Little hiccups. She's back.
Yeah, you started saying something and then
Yeah, I was just basically reflecting on like, you said you have this kind of phantom future vision of yourself as being healed, and the more attached we are to the like perfection of that place, the more elusive it is. And I know that now, according to my past self, I'm very much in that position. I have very little pain, very little symptoms, although I'm not 100% pain and symptom free because I have transitioned my perspective into like, oh, this is my body communicating with me. And not only have I changed that perspective, but in occupying that space, I realized that all of the years that led up to the illness before I considered myself as being sick, I also had pain and symptoms during that time. I just didn't define it as pain and illness. I wasn't hypervigilant to it. Like I hadn't been through such an intense season of pain and symptoms that it sensitized me so deeply to those things. So once I became hypersensitized, it then was like a snowball rolling down a hill. And I thought the only way to be well is to be perfect. And now that I feel well, I'm like, no, I still have pain and symptoms. The only difference is like, I used to never recognize them at all, or on like a deeper somatic, emotional, nervous system level, I was just like completely numb in my life as a whole. So when you are like a highly sensing system, which I think there are certain neurotypes, body structures, personality types, trauma histories that just occupy that space more strongly than others. However, there is in my experience, and pretty much anyone I talk to on here experience, like an experience with forced surrender, chronic pain, and illness that ultimately comes with the territory of somatically unnumbing, right? So it's not lost on me. Like, sure, I had COVID, I had the car accident, I had terrain issues, I had a long childhood history, I had a stress bucket that overflowed at this moment in time, but it's not lost on me that it was also coinciding with when I began to dive deeply into the somatic work and started actually feeling emotions that I had been numb to previously. And is this not the way the body responds to that as well? So it's I think you said something really powerful just about surrendering the vision of like being perfectly healed. And in that we actually find the healing, but we also find a great deal of trust in our bodies, which is what we lost in that experience. That puts us in a position where pain and symptoms and flares, these are actually all really normal human experiences. Like our bodies talk to us. And we don't need to pathologize all of them because these are just normal body things. And if you talk to someone who hasn't been through chronic illness, they'll be like, yeah, sometimes I feel this way, but they won't define it as a fiasco. It will just like be a part of the human experience, right? So you have to remind yourself that your system has been sensitized to such a high degree. And the only way out of that is, essentially like the brain and body system retraining. You have to train yourself out of how traumatizing that experience was, which is not easy.
Yeah, and it starts with understanding that pain and symptoms are protective. They are not dysfunctions. They are, it's your body, your system doing what it thinks it needs to do based on a perception of reality. And that perception is where you have control. You do not have control over symptoms. You do not have control over pain. And that's what I was chasing. When I learned that that was impossible, but what was possible was, how do I react to a symptom? How do I react to pain? And how is that reaction either starving that neural circuit or bolstering it, or strengthening it? Because we know that neurons that fire together wire together. So if I'm constantly thinking about my stomach pain, my joint pain, my fatigue all day, what is that confirming to my brain? There's a problem, we need to fix it. So because symptoms are protective, what's it going to do? Well, let's make more. This is a really terrifying situation that Alex is in. And so learning that pain and symptoms are not often directly correlated to any kind of damage in the body was just game changing for me. And actually just having that understanding begins the process of healing, because the threat level of these symptoms goes down, and it's the feeling of threat that is perpetuating the cycle. And it's a learned it's Pavlov's dog. You learn pain. You do, and that sounds crazy, I know, but it's a habit. It becomes a habit. And so we know how neuroplastic the brain is. We know that we can teach it new things. So that's what we have to do with chronic pain. If you feel you've exhausted everything else, of course, and there are physical reasons for pain too, but when your pain is, over months and years, when it's hard to tie it to, a physical injury, when it's intermittent, when it moves around, when there's stuff going on in multiple systems of your body, what makes the most sense? That you've got a problem here and in your stomach and in your joints, and you've got all these different dysfunctions, diseases, or your brain is, I don't want to say making a mistake, it kind of is. It's like your brain is reacting to burnt toast like it's a fire in your house.
Well, so would a fire alarm.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So it's an alarm system. Let's get attention to the body.
It's programmed in a certain way to fulfill a certain function, and it receives the message, and boom, we've all burnt toast and set the fire alarm off. That's a really great analogy, actually. Yeah.
So your system, you talked about being sensitized, and that's what's happened. When you have chronic pain, the longer it goes on, the more sensitized you become. You actually get more neurons, more sensory neurons in that place, right? Your brain goes, we need to remember, because your brain is a prediction machine too. So it's constantly taking in information and updating its software, and so there's so much we don't have control over. We always have control over our thoughts.
Yeah.
So that's why I often start with people and get them to just consider and really take the time. What are the thoughts that are on a loop in your head? And when you're chronically ill, it's normally stuff like, how am I going to do that thing later? Ow, that really hurts. Maybe it's going to get worse. I've got to go do X, and I might have to eat that food that I know causes me problems. But essentially, it's just like a lot of worrying. And that's information for your system. So what's your brain going to do with that information? It's going to perceive that there's a lot of things to worry about and protect you from. The world then becomes, everything is dangerous.
Yeah, and it shrinks your world, and then your capacity, like when we're talking about nervous system, your capacity continues to shrink and continues to shrink and continues.
Yes, it only goes one way. Yeah.
Another good little analogy I'm thinking of now is, like you said, these personality types tend to be like worriers, and I think a lot of us have these experiences, and we look back and we're like, hey man, I've always been this way. Like,
yeah,
programmed us in this way. I remember it being like 8 years old at summer camp, and I was a very anxious child, like just lots of stuff, like from the very beginning. And there are a lot of different reasons for that. But one of the counselors, she looked at me and she was like, man, you really are a worry wart, aren't you? And then for some reason, that's like burned, and that experience like burned into my memory. I was like, worry wart? I guess so. I'm just making sure everything's good. Like I was like, I'm just considering all the different, at like 8 years old, I was already searching for something to always be wrong. And it took me until like 20 years later to identify as someone who was ill. But if I looked back, I was like, none of this is actually new at all. And so the other metaphor I think is like,
your physical tissues are always adapting to your behavior and your thinking, which is a part of your behavior, a way that you're operating and relating to your body. So, me being a trainer and Body Talks being a big part of like how I help people to retrain that system. In muscle memory, we say muscle memory is like, oh, you build a certain amount of muscle and then you take a year off. It's not going to take that long to rebuild. Like, you're good. If you've ever pushed your body hard in your life and built muscle, you're like set. You could take a break and your body is right there, because the cells in those muscles acquire more mitochondria and they don't ever go anywhere. So the muscles shrink, but the cells still have more mitochondria. And so it's similar to, you said, those like motor neurons, like they're replicating and they're becoming more and more. And so every time that I am creating the same loop of hypervigilance, my physical tissues are actually responding to that and amplifying the sensations that are coming from that. So I think, even knowing about neuroplastic, because I did a lot of reading on neuroplastic pain before I had any. I have a funny way of like synchronicity, predicting my own experience so I can be ready for it. Like I remember I did some like assistant work years ago for a personal injury lawsuit or lawyer, and then I got in an accident and needed to file a lawsuit, and I never would have known how to do stuff like that. But I had read about it, even before any of the experiences, but still it floored me in the experience, like how intense the symptoms and pain can actually be. Like you said, that the clues are like, they're widespread, they don't make sense, they come and go, you've exhausted all the testing, right? But still, you're so convinced. It's like, but I'm telling you, this pain is like really like backbreaking. Like it really is. Mm-hmm. And then it's gone. And then it's back, and then it's gone. And it's like, it's actually mind blowing. Like, this is not like, oh yeah, psychosomatic pain. It's like, you're just sensitive and it's like not as painful as actually breaking your back. Like, this is actually the same message in the brain.
Yeah.
With the same level of magnitude and the same level of power. And it's extremely profound. And it really is the momentum in whatever direction you're in. If you're someone who's never been through this experience, you have a great deal of momentum in the direction of body trust, because body trust has never been broken. Mm-hmm. If you go through an experience where it is broken, all of a sudden now you're hypervigilant and you're in the wrong momentum. But I think it's also like, that can happen from injury. That can happen from car accident. It doesn't have to be chronic illness. Like, you can literally damage your back physically and then have prolonged chronic pain from that actually is not related to the injury.
Yes.
But was just created by the circuitry that was set off in the injury. And it could be in the same spot as the injury, but the tissue's healed. So why is it still hurting? So I think that's another, like, just to kind of like really impress upon people, like, how powerful this actually is.
All pain is real. I want that to be really, really clear. I've worked with people that have had no physical damage, injury, disease process, that have terrible pain. And the pain is, it's their brain, something happened that was traumatic, your brain will immobilize you.
Yeah.
It will, that's what pain is, protective. And so, and you can also, there's a great story where a guy on a construction site fell on a nail, and the nail went through his foot, super long nail. And he's screaming, he's in so much pain. They take him to the ER, they take the boot off, the nail has gone in between his toes. There's no contact with tissue.
Oh, I know this story. So
yeah,
good.
It gets talked about in these circles because it's a great example, right, of your brain's perception.
Yes.
Okay. And so your brain is taking in this information from everywhere. And so it also gets it wrong in terms of it doesn't produce pain when it should. So think about cancer. Okay. So when we have often these things that happen very slowly in the body, So cancer is one example, but you can look at MRIs of people that have really terrible degenerative arthritis, but they're not in pain and they're still totally functional because it's been slow enough for the brain not to register that as a threat. And maybe they're super happy in their life generally. They've not had anything particularly traumatic or difficult, or maybe they have, but they're very good at emotional regulation. They're very resilient for lots of different reasons. Maybe it's their socioeconomic situation. Maybe it's their community situation. Who knows? There's so many factors in this. But the point is, there are many, many, many people walking around with herniated discs, with degeneration, with stenosis, with weird nerve stuff, all kinds of scoliosis, structural things that have zero pain.
And they have no idea.
And they have no idea.
And they live long, healthy lives, continuing to never have a clue.
Yeah. So we know then that the opposite can be true. Okay. You can have a completely healthy, functioning body and be in excruciating pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
I work with people in that, and it's really challenging to get people on board with that. But there are some really amazing resources and different ways of explaining it. And if you can accept the hypothesis that your brain is has a dial, if you like, and it's like making a decision. Your brain is making a decision about how much pain, where the pain is, and if you can accept that, and that your body, the physical tissues of your body is fine, that immediately turns down the threat level.
Right.
And you immediately feel safer, and you just go, and you can be really lighthearted about it. You can be like, oh, thanks, brain. Thanks for being so protective, but I'm actually okay.
Yes.
My body's fine.
Yes.
And think about, put your thoughts into what are all the things you can do. Now, this is not me saying, oh, just be positive. And, we also have to be super compassionate about what we're experiencing and kind to our bodies and not override. Because even if your body is fine, your nervous system and your brain's appraisal of it is that it's not. And we can't rush from doing nothing to, oh, everything's fine, I'm going to do everything. And that I work with people that did that and it backfires. So I think what you're doing is great, because it is about, let's meet your body and your brain where it's at now and build progressively in a way that feels safe. And I think what you do really well is find that challenge zone, which is important because we need to build capacity. And that challenge zone is where your system learns, oh, I can be safe doing this thing. This is a safe movement. This is a safe load.
But
and it is Goldilocks.
As soon as you override just a little bit too much, though, not safe. Shut it down. Shut down the operation. And now I've made an idea about this exercise or this activity or this level of social interaction or this much work, not safe, not safe, not safe, which is not true.
Yeah.
It's like a little toddler that needs to be coaxed out of the corner after they got really upset.
Exactly. And you wouldn't say to the toddler, you're being ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is not true.
Yeah.
Like, just forget about it. Forget about it. You're fine. Well, people would, but the point is,
you would have to slowly offer them a corrective experience because it's not something they can understand in their mind. You need to show them in their experience, this is safe, slowly, incrementally, and no different than like you adopt a traumatized dog, and it's.
I was just going there. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it has to be incremental because their system is gonna react, and so I have two questions. Because one, we started going in body talks, and I want to talk about that. But I want to ask you first, in your coaching that you've done, because right now, for me, the structure is ambiguous. I understand the concepts, but how would you go about, like, say we met 2 years ago, and I hired you to help me get out of these mental loops? Like, how would you like structure a system for somebody to work on that? What does that look like?
So I would always start with education. So I would help you understand how pain works. That's number one. Then something that I was taught how to do in my training was somatic tracking. And you've talked about this a little already, but essentially being with the sensations in your body in a titrated way, in a safe way. It's very slow. And what you do in somatic tracking, it is a little bit like meditation, but you're doing positive affect as well. So you're basically going, okay, there's a sensation in my lower back. If I had to give it a color, what color would it be? If I were to describe it like a tree, what kind of tree would it be? How big would it be? You can even think about shrinking a mini version of yourself and walking around the outline of that sensation. Draw that sensation for me. Is it more like a cloud or more like a rock? Is it a burning sensation, or is it a tingling sensation, or is it kind of numb feeling? But essentially getting curious about that sensation rather than jumping straight to
Yes.
Oh my God, that's
so good. Because that's so good, because curiosity is neutral. Like, you can't embody curiosity from a place of this is good or this is bad. It's like impossible. So it immediately neutralizes the experience, which is, I've had some very interesting, back in the day, when I was coaching more. I wasn't ever coaching people specifically for eating disorders, but I took in a lot of clients that had like old, binge eating issues or restrictive issues, or because that was my story for so long. And I often, there was an exercise, somatic exercise of like creating an embodied sense of like curiosity that like immediately unraveled the loop of a binge eating episode. Because
becoming an observer to your experience, that feeling of healthy kind of separation, not disassociation, but watching symptoms, watching sensations,
like a parent, but not like a
so that's really the great pickup, great pickup, because that's the old program, right? So we're trying to build a new program of how we relate to sensations, and
not from an expectation of
focusing on it and wanting it to change. And what's really interesting is I would do somatic tracking with people, and I would say 9 times out of 10, just the practice of being with the sensation without an agenda, with pure curiosity, that sensation would move or change. Fantastic, right? Because that means it's not your tissue, it's not your bone, because you are literally just sitting here. All that's changed is your perception of that sensation. Nothing else has changed physically, but you're having a different experience of that sensation now. What does that tell you? Okay. So that experiential change, is like,
wow.
That's so great for the brain, for your system. So that's a big piece.
A corrective experience for people.
Yes, it's a corrective experience.
They're not going to hear you when you tell them, oh, it works this way. Okay, yeah, it works this way. You have to have the physical experience where your body is experiencing, oh my God, this is actually happening differently than it has been and differently than I expected.
So how we relate to our symptoms, how we relate to what's happening in our body is hugely, hugely important, because we can turn on stress chemicals through thought alone, right? You don't have to be being chased by a bear. You imagine being chased by a bear, the same inflammatory, adrenalizing, let's go process happens in your body. Now you're doing that. How many times a day are we triggering that, fight flight response, if you like, or you can just call it, an alert mode, an alarm mode in the body. And we know that breaks tissue, that breaks us down, in an effort to keep us alive. Fantastic system, but not something you should be living in. And most of the people I worked with and myself, I was living in either fight or flight or collapse. I did not have that ventral vagal. I didn't even know what that felt like. So that's another interesting piece for me with coaching is, so you can do somatic tracking on sensation that is maybe quote unquote negative or, uncomfortable. But I also would like to do somatic tracking on things that feel good. You could start with neutral, okay? Like, how does the tip of your nose feel? Same thing, what color, what shape? If it's a piece of art in an art gallery and you're there with your coffee and you're looking at it, what are you noticing? Yeah, so same principle, but getting those neural circuits going, because if your brain is constantly appraising the bad, what's the output of that going to be? And it becomes really good. It's not just your brain that's trained on it. Your physiology changes, like I was saying, like the amount of neurons you have in that area, sensory neurons, multiply in response. So if we think about the homunculus, right, the map that the brain has of the body, that map gets kind of distorted. We call it smudging, where suddenly areas are taking up way more real estate than they should be. So it's all real. Like what you're feeling, that intensity of pain that you're feeling in that area is real, and you have more power to change that experience than perhaps you've been led to believe. Mm-hmm. And yes, you need some information, you do need a bit of support, but essentially this is something you do yourself. Yeah. Like, nobody can do this for you. But I think a lot of the people that listen to you and follow you are smart, right? Look up this stuff and just realize you can change it. Your homunculus is changing all the time based on how you use your body. And so just to go back to that kind of, tracking positive sensation. What feels good? Let's expand it. Let's make it bigger. And let's look for opportunities every single day in your life to stay in the good and train your brain that way. I would often describe it like a fork in the road. You get a sensation and you have a decision to make. Do I go down the old road, which is really, really, it's paved, it's really wide, it's a smooth ride, and you can keep going round and round, but we know where it takes you, and it keeps you in this place of pain and vigilance. Or we can do something that at the time feels kind of bizarre, which is to go, oh, thank you for this symptom. You don't have to like it, right? You don't have to like the symptom. You don't have to go, yay, I've got a symptom or I've got pain, but just have a neutral response. Like, oh, okay, that's there, but what else is there? What else in my body is actually feeling quite good right now? Or something out of your body. What am I looking at in my environment that feels safe, that feels nourishing? And keep training those neural pathways. And your brain will prune back what it doesn't use.
Yes. So good. I think one thing that's coming up for me too, as like a little tangent, is to be careful of is like kind of back to the identity pieces a little bit. Like what's one of the main things that we see that prevents people from choosing that new road? And for me, it comes back to, this process is going to force you into a deeper level of self and body trust, because when we outsource, like you talked about in the beginning, for answers, we usually end up with diagnoses. And if we have a pre-established level of trust in the people who have done the diagnosing, that surpasses my own level of trust. In other words, if I trust the doctor more than I trust myself, which is very natural for most of us, then I'm going to identify with that diagnosis that's been given to me. And I see diagnoses in two categories in this situation. The first one is a diagnosis that is a descriptor, but not an explainer. So fibromyalgia is a really good one. Why am I going to identify with widespread unexplained pain? That's not a root cause. I had probably 3 or 4 doctors try to diagnose me with it, and I actually didn't allow them to. I was like, I hear what you're saying. I understand that I'm in this population of people, and I'm going to leave now. Like, I refuse. Don't even write the paperwork. Don't do it. So it's that one, or it's also, so the first one is a descriptor, not an explainer.
And the second one is incidental findings. And you'll find this most often with like functional medicine, MRI imaging. If you are testing every system in the body, desperately trying to find the answer to your pain and your symptoms, you're gonna find stuff. It's like if you're getting a full body MRI, like we probably all have benign masses and like weird shit going on. Like you're gonna find everything when you're looking for it. You're going to. The question is whether it's driving your symptoms and your pain. And so in functional medicine, we often like we're searching for root cause, and whatever we're experiencing, you know, we find that we have SIBO, or we find that we have whatever we have, and we're told that like this is what's driving the symptoms. Okay, so we theoretically heal that, still have symptoms. The disc damage has been healed, still have symptoms. We healed the tendon injury, still have symptoms. That's when you get curious about like, okay, like the incident, like are these all incidental findings? Are any of these actually driving?
They're all downstream, for me, they're all downstream consequences.
Yeah. And it's great to focus on and optimize those things. But if you're attached in that process to this is the thing that's going to fix me, that's the trap, because that is the energy that's fueling the entire thing. So, and also I think just, separating like the disc damage is not what's causing the pain. The gut issues are not what's causing the sensation is the brain's response to those things. So the brain can have a response with or without those things. And that's just like so mind-blowing to me.
And you do have changes that happen when this brain response has been there for a very long time. Of course, your physiology adapts. Of course, your gut microbiome reacts. Of course, you get these inflammatory processes in the body.
Right.
And so you can keep working on those. It's not to say like, don't, eat an anti-inflammatory diet, or don't do movement, or don't, this is all of these things intertwined. But if you are completely neglecting your brain and nervous system and just going after the physical, then you're missing a huge piece, because you can see how years and years of fight or flight, probably your stomach acid is like pretty much depleted, right? Because or you've got functional digestive issues because your system has been running from a bear to collapse, multiple times a day for weeks, months, years on end. You're going to have some messed up stuff happening in your body, but the root is not what you think.
Like such an amazing reframe though too. It's like, it's not just that these are incidental findings that aren't actually driving your symptoms. It's that and it's the brain that's driving the symptoms. It's that these additional incidental findings are also actually downstream from that brain relationship, right? Like
so you have MCAS or whatever you have. So you eat a food, you get a reaction, or you go into an environment, you get a reaction. Now that is real, and some of it is chemical and some of it is physical. But the way out of it isn't to keep chasing the chemical, the physical. The way out of it is to do what you need to do to make yourself comfortable in that moment. And maybe you do need to reduce going into those environments for a period of time. Maybe your diet has to be, dialed in a certain way for a period of time, supplements for a period of time. But ultimately, the goal is to stop being afraid of the world, and that then your immune system won't react to everything like it's dangerous. Like the amount of people I work with whose pain would get worse. I work with a lot of people with allergies too, but whose pain would get worse when it was cold, or when it was wet, or when there was a thunderstorm, or when there was a high pollen count that day, or when they walked in this particular environment. Or, I mean, it's insane. Like it's so easy to see as somebody working on the other side. Is like your brain is just reacting to the world as if it's dangerous because it's trying to protect you. There's actually, because why is everybody else, or not everybody else, but most people are okay with carpet or with eating, dairy or whatever it is. And I really don't want to discount, true like allergies. And I took loads of things out of my diet for a period of time, and maybe I needed to for a little bit, but it's when you get stuck there. It's when you're still there years later and you're like, actually, how do I get out of this? Because all that seems to be happening, and you talked about it earlier, is things are getting narrower and smaller, and the list of issues is not getting, the issues are not getting smaller. That list is getting longer. And then you have, in my opinion, you have to think bigger and look beyond the physical. And the reason, you know, people's pain would get worse maybe with those pressure changes, let's say, is we have these mechanoreceptors. So, you know, we have sensors for temperature, pressure, all these different things. And that sensor is sending that message to the brain, okay, there's a change in the environment. Still up to your brain to decide, is that change dangerous or not?
Wow. Because I have some barometric sensitivity, so this is like really helpful for me.
Because why can other people be okay?
Yeah.
In those, if it was a really damaging to our physiology, we would not be okay in these different pressure environments. So we have to realize that's such a giveaway sign to me with things like that there is a lot of brain, and it's primary pain, not secondary. Primary being from the just brain, secondary meaning there's tissue damage of some kind. Because it just, think about it, just doesn't really make sense.
I think living in a culture that so pathologizes pain and discomfort is not health either. I mean, any mild discomfort, any pain, there's a medication for all of it. So there is, and not only that, but it's like there is a masking of emotion, an inability to express, a formality in work environments where you can't really express, and like there's just such a level of like normalcy in dampening like the body sensations, and then when the body sensations poke through those mechanisms of dampening them, they're highly pathologized. Whether it's like, what is it like to go through the catharsis of a natural birth? Is pain something to be avoided, or is this actually like a really beautiful part of the process? Whereas if we were in life not trained to dampen every single sensation, that is also lowering nervous system capacity, because your ability to hold intensity of sensation without collapse, which includes pain, is a skill, and it's a skill that should be built as life goes on so that we can handle things like childbirth. This is just my opinion, right? I think there's a process. I think there's a power. I think as a woman, there's a deep femininity in it. And I think also on the emotional plane, we pathologize things like depression and anxiety. These are all manifestations of bodies that have lost the capacity to deeply hold the emotions that are passing through. I mean, to put a label on something like depression, and this person's just sad, that they don't have the capacity to hold the grief that they're moving through. And the grief is valid. The grief is in response to very real things that are going on top of maybe, you know, other physiological root causes. But like, I think it's our increase in chronic pain and chronic symptoms and chronic illness is not just a result of a toxic environment, which it is. It's also a culture that has made a habit of, from the very beginning, dampening sensation and any uncomfortable sensation, any uncomfortable emotion, any uncomfortable situation. We can't even make eye contact with each other with that discomfort, and then pathologizing it when it does eventually crash through those walls that we've built around it. And so reframing that too is like, you know, if you can master your ability to feel pain, it starts to become less painful. And so I think as a good segue into just a brief couple minutes on body talks, like this is a huge part of what I'm doing with clients, and why, one, physical training is a really important way to do that. We need to train ourselves to feel sensation and to feel pain and to feel intensity in the physical tissues without collapse. That makes us physically stronger in the tissues. It makes us physically stronger in the nervous system, in all of that. So not only is it something that it needs to be a baseline for everyone, but especially in situations of chronic pain and illness, these are those seasons in which we now are afraid to move. We're afraid to access intensity. We're afraid to feel like pain. And so we then back off on intensity and we back off on training. And now is actually not the time to do that. Now, sometimes there are times to do that. Are you bedridden in the hospital with some serious kidney failure? Like, I'm not going to make you get blood.
Yeah.
You know, within reason of everything that we're kind of balancing these different worlds here, like, you know, you are going to further deplete your capacity the longer that you avoid intensity in all parts of your life. in your work, in your relationships, in your stimulation, in whatever you think is going to like symptom flare you. You know, your world becomes narrower, narrower, narrower. The things that you're allowed to do, the foods that you're allowed to eat, the narrower that becomes, the less your body has the capacity to hold any of them. And so for me, Body Talks has been so close to my heart because like I've been training for 10 years. Other people have been training myself longer than that. And like, I've always been nervous system conscious since I got into the somatic world and all of that. But after going through my season of like extreme chronic pain and illness, rebuilding myself out of it and noticing the part of myself that was so afraid to train, so afraid to do anything. And now the version of myself on the other side is the version of myself that not only did it anyway, but learned how to approach it in a way that was slow, incremental, in dialogue with my body and capacity, so that I can start to rebuild that capacity, that ability to hold intensity without pushing myself over the edge into that fear response. And that is something that most people don't have because they stop training. And then when they get back to it, they hire a trainer who then fucks them up because trainers, they don't know. They don't have any clue.
Yeah.
They're just some 26-year-old guy up at Gold's Gym who was a bodybuilder and has never been through the experience that you've been through. And that's the fucking truth, unfortunately. So that was a long tangent. Woo! But I just would love to touch a little bit on, like, I'm so happy, like, just to be connected to you as a friend and be connected to you as a woman and to hear more about the work that you've done. And I'd love to hear, too, just knowing that you have that history, you know, what your experience in Body Talks as my client has been like, and what you're excited about in terms of the progress you've been making with that.
Yeah, so what I think I needed, so I was in a very similar place where I've trained a lot and I've also had periods of not training at all. And I definitely had negative associations with training because I'd overridden so many times. And I got to this point where I was like, I'm just not interested in going into that place anymore. I was walking and, you know, I was moderately active, I guess. And then 10 months ago, I had my daughter, and I don't know how this all came together. It was kind of divine timing, I think.
Yeah.
But you'd been on my radar for a while, and I really liked your approach. I liked that you had this history and really understood not just sound bites, like really understood the nervous system, really understood capacity. And I like that, and this sort of playfulness. I want to have a playfulness and a lightness with training that I've not ever had, if I'm honest. It's always been something I've used to fix myself, make myself smaller, make myself, it's been a control thing for me. And I knew I wanted something different. I knew I wanted to feel expansion. I wanted to feel alive in my body, connected to my body. That trust piece is so important. And I feel like I'd never really cultivated that. And I think having my daughter, I was like, I want her to have that. Really want her to have that.
Yeah.
And that brought it into focus in a new way. And I think plus that process of having a baby and all the change in your body there's a lot of negativity around it. Understandably, it's hard. It's a hard process. And it gives you this nice blank slate. That's what it felt like for me, of like, okay, well, everything's changed. I'm not that person anymore. And that's great. Let's start again and build something way better this time. And I have all this knowledge of the body because of what I used to do, but I actually don't want to do it myself. That was another thing. I was like, that's a problem for me because I get in my head, I go into this research mode, and that's not what I want this to be. I want this to be supportive and fun, and that's what it's been for me. And it's like, what, a few months in now?
3?
I said to you at the beginning, 3 months. I said to you at the beginning, I was like, I'll just be happy if I can commit and just do something for my body, you know, once or twice a week. And I've done that and so much more, because I now feel excited to move my body. I don't feel any of this like pressure to push myself or to skip a workout either. I'm sort of like, I found this really healthy.
Yeah, you're in the gray area, and you're just
I found this really healthy starting to cultivate this really healthy relationship, I think, with exercise, where it's like, do I have the capacity to do something and it be just a creative process? Like I have your framework and it's perfect for me because I need something to hang off of, but then it's also nice and flexible where I can be like, I know that Meg doesn't care how many reps I do, or even really what my technique is like, or what the order I do these things in.
We do care about technique, but I know you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I know you care about technique, but not in a way where it's like,
we're arriving at it.
Moving is important, and exploring and trusting your body, and not. I think that I come from a background of perfection and technique and stress around that.
You're not over pathologizing the corrective exercise.
Right. What you're encouraging is, what's the feeling of this?
Animals in the wild aren't worried about activating their core when they're running. They're very functional. They're athletes, basketball players. They're moving in rotation. They're not thinking about tucking their core under or making it perfect when they move, right? And so having access to the positions we need to have access to, mainly through the breath, which is the thing that
I wanted to mention that. Yeah.
You know, it's like we get into this space where every training session that we do has to be like so perfectly aligned, and that's not how humans move. That is, in a lot of cases, creating this additional compression, which you talked a lot about with like your history with training, and getting more into a place where the body is showing you, as long as you start it by giving it the chance to expand in the rib cage and find the core, the body will show you how to engage your core. It's not something you have to force. It's not something you have to compress. Just exhale and actually like slow down for a minute and stop trying to subject all of this shit onto your body and listen. And that's how the metaphor works really well with this like deeper body dialogue. And so there's just like so many fucking pieces, but
there's so many pieces. I feel like I could talk about it for hours, but it's given me trust. It's given me so much trust in myself, in my system, and I'm getting results very quickly, and I'm training like not very much. I'm a stay-at-home mum. You know, I don't have loads of time to do this, or, you know, I'm sleeping like shit, like, and I'm still feeling, just from the small amount of things I'm doing, like a change, a really positive change. And a lot of that feeling is of just like opening and like this inner strength, like this inner, but it's not a hard or compressive strength. It's like, just feel good.
Finding the right intensity in exactly the places that are the most effective, and then like getting back to your life. That's
like, I don't want to spend hours training.
Trusting your body to move and not overthinking every mechanical perfection, you know, even though like I assess movement and that's what I do, I'm always in this like, but we're not going to pathologize this either, because again, it's kind of the same with like the healing.
You need to know the rules to break them.
Yes.
And to bend them and make them work for the person you have in front of you. And that's what you do.
The experts of the world master the rules, and they become an expert the moment they know what is the appropriate time to break them.
Yes. And I think that's what you bring. And I love that. I love that you know way more than me. I love that we can have these dialogues about what I'm feeling and explore different things. It's just become a source of like pleasure for me doing this. And in the past, training has always been like this, you know, I've got to do it, and I've got to get this many workouts in, and I've got to progressively load, and it's just stressful. It was stressful. And I'm at a stage in my life where I'm like, if it's stressful, I'm not doing it. Like, period. Nope. I'm just like not doing it. Why would I do that? It's not loving to me. It's not then it's not supportive to my physiology. And you know, that power, like I talked about before, the power of your thoughts, the power of how you are doing something, the energy that you are doing something with.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what you do, what technique, how many reps, this, that, whatever. It can be poison.
Yep.
It can still be poison.
Or you can build the fattest ass ever doing way less than you ever thought.
Yeah.
You're actually.
I mean, I'm not there yet, but I want to be. But it's changed how I. It's changed how I move.
She sent me a full selfie. She sent me a picture of the shadow, guys. And what was you saying? That shadow was booty was banging in the shadow.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows when when you carry, like when you have a baby, like you end up in this like tucked position, your pelvis tucked under and your ass goes really flat, and it's just, you just feel gross. And I was like, whoa, I can see my butt again. Like, this is so exciting. And I've not been like doing tons of glute bridges or anything crazy. I've just been
overloading every time you go into a session, like there's a time and a place for adding weight. Sure, definitely.
I think,
that's a simplification of all of the factors that create growth, for sure.
And I'm excited to, in the future, you asked me what I'm excited about too, and I'm excited to challenge myself more, as time goes on, and have more fun with it, and do more challenging, but from a place of play and fun, and let's see if I can do this, and wow, I can, and let's see what else I can do. That kind of approach is what
so much progression still in front of us, but the pace that we're going at feels like so perfect, and no urgency, no rush, and in that place, seeing progress more quickly, like it's exciting. So,
and I feel like this is applicable not just to training, but to so many things in life, and I've learned it the hard way. Where your attention goes, energy flows. Where you find joy and pleasure and peace, like that's where good things happen, believe it or not. Like, find those people, find those things, those whatever it is, those environments that light you up, and just keep doing more and more and more of it. And that's what I mean by you have to become that person, and that's the retraining process. Is like you have to.
Yes. And you do everything
differently. Yes, everything is different. Yeah.
And training is a model for that. It's a model for how you're doing everything. It's a model for how you're relating to everything and everyone, beginning with your body. And that's why Body Talks is focused on that. I went through the whole, like, do I want to, dive deeper into functional medicine? Do I want to become an SEP, a somatic experiencing practitioner? Do I want to go to chiropractic school? And I was like, no, I think movement was my ticket out of this, and that's what I want to give other people, because it's where I'm already an expert, and it is the thing that moved the needle the most for me, So
100%. And I think you could, if you'd ended up in those routes, and I think they're amazing things to do with your time. I think with our brains, I'm kind of speaking for you a bit here, it can just lead to this fixed mentality all the time. And I think what you're doing is an empowering mentality.
Pieces from everything. And I don't want to be one thing. I don't want to study in one modality. I don't want to.
Yeah.
That's not what's healing people.
I don't believe that. I think it's a piece.
Yeah.
I think, just you the trust piece is so important, that relationship with your body. And I think that's what you're excellent at, is helping people, supporting people to cultivate that healthy relationship with their body, with movement. And that's pervasive through everything in your life. That's not going to a chiropractor and them clicking you, oh, thank you very much, I feel better now. No, this is what you're doing is it goes into every day, every hour of the day. I think about, where are my feet? Where is my rib cage? Not in a vigilant way, just curious way. Exactly.
I love it. Yay. Well, this has been so great. I knew we could talk for I know we could talk for hours, because when we have a session, I'm like, I'm going to book an extra half hour because I know we're going to be on one.
So much fun. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. This was such a great, amazing educational conversation. And I hope that anybody watching this who is going through this season of forced surrender is feeling comforted and excited and rejuvenated. And I
It's a season. It's a season. It's not your whole life, and it's not who you are. I wish somebody had said that to me and drilled that into me. This is not who you are. This is not your identity. This is something you're experiencing. And it will make you, it's hard to see this at the time, but you said it earlier, like it forces you to confront these dark recesses of your soul.
Put nicely.
Yeah. And it's so incredibly tough, isolating, painful, but it's for a reason. It's for your growth. It's for you to, I believe, to expand, to become an even bigger, brighter, more fulfilled, beautiful version of yourself.
Like I could not have continued as the version of myself before I got sick. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I could not have continued that way. Like, it wouldn't have worked. It was like death or this, which was a form of death in itself. And so when you see that, you're like, oh, actually, it's not only that I'm grateful that this happened, it's that, like, it had to.
Yeah.
Because there were so many pieces of me that were just not expressed. Simply put. But that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. I'll let you go.
I feel like this is great. We'll probably have you back on here at some point to maybe we'll break it down into, like, today was a lot of tangents and a lot of pain science, but I'd love to do a further tangent with you at some point, since you see eye to eye with me on so much of this, and you understand it on a level that very few people do, even people who are in it or have been through it. Like, your insights are just exactly the same as how my experience has been. So it feels like a really nice mirror to just riff off of. So thank you for being here. And I hope everyone enjoyed, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Okay. Bye.